In this modeling tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use some of Blender's core modeling tools to develop this model right here. This is designed for people who are kind of new to subdivision surfaces and want to know how to use Blender's core modeling tools to achieve something like this lid right here. Blender has a lot of plugins and a lot of extensions that you can add on to the application, but we are going to look at using a core set of basic modeling tools to achieve this. So let's come over here and take a look at the final model, and you can see what the lid looks like. In fact, if I come over here and turn the body off, we can look at the bottom. It's got two holes that come through for the liquid to pass through and for air to come in, like a black gasket, and then the top part here. This is what we're going to focus on. So the first thing that we need to do is let's bring the body back up, and I'm going to turn this off, and this is going to be our starting point. The first thing that we need to do is insert an object that's going to form the foundation of the lid. And we always want to know where the 3D cursor is. The 3D cursor is right here, and you can see it by this little cross hair. So since it's down there, it's at the very center of the world origin, and that's what we want it to be, which is at the center of the object that I've created right here. If it is not in your scene, press Shift and S and just invoke cursor to world origin. The next thing that we need to do is we need to add an object, and we're going to add a circle object. It's by default going to be pretty big at 100 centimeters, so let's just decrease that and make it we'll just make it 2 centimeters. What I want to do is I want to make sure the default of 32 vertices works. We're going to be adding detail to it. In this particular case, having more vertices is better than less. So 32 is a good working starting point. I'm going to come over to the Move tool, and I want to just move this up so it's more towards the top. Up here, in fact, let me come to the front view, and that looks good, right about there. But it is a little bit too small, so I'm going to press the S key, and I'm just going to scale this uniformly until we're right about to the inner edge. Now, let's take a look at what it's going to be sitting into. It's got a rubber gasket that's designed to make the lid fit tightly into the object. You can see there's a little bit of a rounding lip right here, and that's what it needs to fit into. So our starting object needs to be just slightly inside of that. What we want to do now is we want to come over here to Object, and since we've scaled that, we want to apply the scale. You can see it's got a scaling factor of nearly 2.5, 2.42, and it's always best to have that zeroed out to a scale of 1. I'm going to press the Tab key. Right now it's an unfilled open edge loop. So it's just edges, no fill. And what I want to do is I'm going to come over here into edge mode. Then when you bring up the context menu, there is a new face from edge, and that will fill it into a polygon. That's very easy. I want to create the core foundation that creates sort of the lip. So we're going to come over to the inset face function. This is one of the core modeling tools that you're going to end up using a lot. I'm going to click and hold and pull in just a little ways. Now, you can see that sometimes it can become a little bit weird with that circle. So let's undo, and I want to show you a little bit an easier way to do it. If we come over to the drag method, I'm going to switch back to the tweak mode, and that's going to allow me to click anywhere on the inside and then pull in, and that gives me better control. So we're going to come in to about like that, and then we're going to come over to the loop cut tool, and I'm going to add a loop cut right in the middle here. Now we can make changes, and we are going to make changes to all of this, so don't worry if it's not exact. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the Move tool and Face mode, and I'm going to double click this outer ring right here. If we come over to the Extrude Along Normals, I can click, hold, and drag and just pull up those polygons like that. Now, this is where we're going to make some changes, and this is all about showing you how to do basic editing. Let's say that I want this to be a little bit thicker. I'm going to come back over to the Move tool right here, and I should say you could select, all the tools can select, but I'm in the Move tool right here, and I'm going to double click this. Now we can scale this, or we can move these polygons along their own normal direction. So let me just show you what the normal direction is. If I come over here and I enable normals. Let me decrease the size of this. Each of these lines is a perpendicular direction to the face. It's a 90-degree direction to the face, and we want to move along that direction. So let's come over here and turn that off because it's a lot of visual. What I'm going to do is come down here to another tool called the shrink fatten function, and I'm going to click, hold, and drag, and I can move these polygons along their normal direction like that. Okay, that's pretty cool. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here back to that loop cut function. I'm going to add a loop right in the middle, and then we're going to come right back to, well, actually in this case we'll come to the move tool. There are frequently multiple ways to do this, and I just want to move this up just like that along the z-axis. Now the interior right here, I just double-clicked this edge and it selected that entire polygon. This I do want to scale a little bit further in, so I'm going to press the S key and I'm going to scale that a little bit more. Okay, now let's add one more loop cut on this inner set of polygons here. So we're going to do a loop cut there, and we're going to come to the very end in here, and we're going to add a little bit of geometry that's going to form this area here where the liquid can come through. So we're going to come over here into top view. We're looking right down on these edges right here, and we're going to come over here to edge mode, and we're going to come down to a tool that's called offset edge slide. This is a really useful tool for subdivision surface modeling. Invoke it, click, hold, and drag on the selected edges, and you can see how I've been able to add in a new slice on either side of that previously selected edge. Now, we actually want it to connect here. That's actually going to be very important. So we're going to invoke this cap endpoint. And there we go. That's pretty cool. That's exactly what we want. We want to come in here and form this a little bit. Subdivision surfaces is fantastic for generating curved surfaces with relatively simple starting geometry. And I want this to be a little bit more round right here, and that's not quite sufficient geometry to do that. So we're going to come over here and press the K key and invoke the knife function. And I'm going to snap to that vertex, draw over here to this edge, but I want it to snap to the center of the edge, so we're going to hold the shift key, click, and then I'm going to come right here. I actually don't want it to connect right in the middle there, so I'm just going to hit the return key, press K again, hold the shift key, click, release the shift key, and I'm just going to come over to this vertex and click, and then hit the return key. Then we're going to switch over into vertex mode right now because we're going to do a little bit more forming on this. Now this is where in tweak mode we need to switch, because tweak mode's only going to let you select one thing at a time. Let's say you wanted to just select a couple of these simultaneously. I'm going to hold the shift key down, click, hold, and drag, and I can swipe across those to select those. Now I'm going to press the S key and I can scale those up a little bit. And this is going to provide us just a little bit better sort of rounding. I still want to form this a little bit more. We're still in vertex mode, so I can just click this vertex to activate it, and I'm going to move that. In fact, I'm just going to sort of manually form these a little bit more, and this will provide better rounding. We only worked on one side. We have a symmetry function which would have made symmetrical the moving operations, but it wouldn't have added these cuts in there. So I only worried about that one side. For right now, that's okay. Let's do this. Let's come in and add some geometry that we're going to need to make this symmetrical. I'm going to press the K key again, and I'm going to click here and come to here, hit return, K key again, click here, come all the way across here. It's going to cut across there, and click and hit return. Okay, so now we can cut in half and do symmetry operations as needed. I want to actually come in here and do a little bit more work on the bottom. And I think I actually want to increase the scale of this just a little bit. So I'm going to press the A key and then the S key, and I'm going to scale this up so it actually overlaps the lip just a little bit right there. And I want to remove this because this is actually kind of getting in my way right now. But an easy way of editing this piece of geometry all by itself is to press the question mark key, and that will allow us to edit here. Now, we're going to do some formation to this after we do the core modeling, but what I want to do is in edge mode, I want to select just this edge, and I want to extrude that down a little bit. So we're going to come to edge and extrude edges. It's going to be freeform by default, but I'm going to press the Z key to make sure it only comes down along the Z axis, and I'm going to extend that just a little bit. Now let's press the F key, which is the same as bringing up the context menu and invoking new face from edges to fill that. The next core modeling tool that we're going to be using again is that inset faces function. Click, hold, and drag. Now in this particular case, we're in select circle mode, and if I come over here and try and grab that, it goes into selection mode as opposed to tool operation mode, and that's not what we want. So here I'm just going to grab the inner circle, and I'm going to bring this in just a little ways, and then we're going to switch over to the extrude along normals function. So some of these core features you're going to use a lot, and just move up until you get down about like that. It's just got to sit snugly within inside of the coffee mug. Hit return, and then we're going to come back over and we're going to invoke a variation of the bevel tool. Now currently, if I select the bevel tool in default mode, this is what it's going to do, is it's going to produce that basic 45-degree angle bevel. And that's not what I want. I want this to produce a row of polygons on either side of that original edge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and say 2 segments, but I want the shape to be 1. So the shape will change so that that produces that original 90-degree angle right there. Okay, so let me just show you this. I'm going to undo. If you want to create that shape from the very beginning, you can simply come up here and change this to 2 segments, tab, and 1, and then from the get-go it will produce that shape for you. I want a little bit of a rounding there, and this is where Subdivision Surfaces is great. It'll produce a little bit of rounding here with this very simple set of geometries. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to double-click this edge. I'm in edge mode, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to produce a new set of bounding polygons on either side of that edge, which is going to constrain it, make it a tight curve right there. And then we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to double click here. Now this is where we want to switch the mode. I want to look more tightly in on that corner right here where my eye is looking, but the widget is way over here, and so this is where we want to switch the mode from selection circle to tweak, and I can just grab that edge and then produce the effect right like that. It may take just a minute of kind of finding where the mouse needs to move, but you can get it right like that. And that'll produce a nice sharp corner. Very good. Okay, now we need to produce symmetry on this, and what I want to do is I want to look at this from the bottom here, so that's the minus Z, and I want to cut this in half. So let's press that K key again, click here and here, return K key, here to here, and return. And there we go. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to produce more geometry here and then connect it from the top to the bottom. Let's come in here and rotate to the top. And what I want to do is create symmetry, because we did some work over here and I'd like to replicate that to the other side. I want to switch to top view, which is the positive Z. Click to deselect. I'm going to turn on X-ray mode so that we can both see through and select through. Come over to the move tool, and we need to critically here select the select box function in order to do this selection correctly. So we're going to come over here and marquee, so we get that just perfectly. X key, and we're going to delete the faces. There we go. Now we need to come over here to the little modifier, and we're going to add a mirror modifier. By default, it's picked the correct modifier that we want across the x-axis, so that's good. This is one of the reasons why it's good to model your objects right at the start of the world origin, because it just makes operations like this quite easy. I want to automatically weld this and apply it. So we're just going to come over here and making sure that your merge vertices, which is the distance here that it's going to look to merge vertices, isn't causing any vertices to collapse that you don't want to. That's an important thing to look at. And then I'm going to apply that. Now it says that we're inside of edit mode, so we can't apply it. So I need to come out into object mode, and then I can apply that. There we go. So tab key takes me back into edit mode. And there we have our symmetrical result right there. So I'm going to rotate this. And what I want to do is grab these. Now this is where we want to switch back into another mode. Now if we come over to Active Tool, take a look at what happens right here. Active Tool is going to allow us to select also, I want to be in face mode. And this is, but it's only going to let you click, 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 click one thing at a time. So this is where I really like selection circle, because I can hold the shift key, click, hold, and drag, and it will select these for me in one mouse click. There we go. Then we're going to come back over here to that extrude along normals function, and I'm going to click, hold, and drag, and I'm going to pull this down. The exact distance doesn't need to be exactly, you don't need to get it exactly down there. What we're going to do is we're going to do this precisely now. And in fact, I'm going to come over here and delete these polygons, because these are not going to be polygons that we're going to end up using. So we're going to bring up the context menu, and we're going to delete those faces. Now let me come back in here and let's turn off X-ray, because this can be a bit difficult to see through all of that. And I want to select this bottom vertex right here, because we're going to put the cursor right there. So when I select that, I can press Shift and S, and cursor to active is the option that I want, and that will put the cursor there. Now the reason that we're doing that is we're going to scale that inset down to meet this point. So I'm in face mode, I'm going to hold the shift key down, and I'm going to select these two faces, and I'm going to delete those also. Now we're going to come back over here into edge mode, and I'm going to double click that loop right there, and we're going to invoke the scale tool. The scale tool by default is going to go to the selection center, but what I want to do is press the period key, and I want to move that pivot point, which is what it says right there. I call it the widget, but it's technically the pivot point, and I want to move it to the 3D cursor's location, and then I can scale along the z-axis right here, and then come down here once I've released and exactly zero that value out, and that now ends up on this planar location. Okay, now I'm going to reset that. So I'm going to press the period key again, and I'm going to reset this to bounding box center. That just means the bounding box of your selection. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to do a little bit more work on this right here. I'm going to switch over into face mode, and I'm going to double click an edge here to produce the loop. We're going to be subdividing this, and if we subdivide it right now, it's not going to be defined very well, and I want a slightly more sharp corner. So we're going to come back over here again to that extrude along normal. So here you can see we're using a core set of operations, and I'm going to bring that in, and I'm going to produce a new bounding set of polygons just inward a little bit like that. That's perfect. That's exactly what we need. Now we need to fill this bottom region down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over into edge mode. We're starting to get complex. There's a lot going on right here. So what I want to do is I want to select these edges to these thin polygons right here. So we've got 6 of these, and I'm going to select 6 edges across this open boundary right here, this open region. Come up into edge mode, and we're going to bridge edge loops, and that will bridge those together. So that closes it for us. Now we can come in here and we can do a little bit more. We probably could have gone a little bit further. So for instance, I could select this edge, can come over, hold the shift key and add that, and then we can bridge. Do the same thing over here. I could probably assign a key command to that. Now here, what we want to do is we just want to fill this region in. We've got this open region here. So I will double click to select that open region and press the F key to fill that. And then to close this off, we're going to be subdividing it. And we really want this to be diced up in a really appropriate way for subdivision surfaces. So I'm going to press that K key again. We're going to come right there, click, click, hit return. So we've essentially just established the basic symmetry. And what I want to do is I really want this to be connected. When you're working with planar regions, this whole bottom area right here is going to be a planar region. You can play a little bit more fast and loose with how your polygons are set up. But what you typically don't want to remain are n-gons that can tend to back in on themselves like that. You can get irregular subdivision artifacts, and you don't want that. So I'm going to press the K key again, and I'm going to come to that vertex, click, and I'm going to come all the way down here, click there, return K. I'm going to do that one more time here. Hit return, K key. There we go. So let's just do this on the other side really quick. K key. There we go. Let's do with that. Enter K. Okay, and I could come here to here. Okay, and I could come across there like that. Let's do that one more time. But we have a polygon here that's still an n-gon. It's a polygon with more than 4 sides. And we're now at a point where we could basically just leave that. The most critical thing that we want to do, we want to add a hard edge loop around here. We're going to take a look at why it is that we want to do that. Dividing small polygons into larger polygons, especially if there's an irregularity, it's going to tend to pull the curvature into this flat area. And if you want to maintain that flat area, then you need to add a crease on that boundary polygon so it doesn't subdivide past that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a simple file that demonstrates this. Conceptually, it's very easy to understand. What I have right here is a basic polygon structure that is subdivided. In fact, we can see this if I come over here, turn off optimal display. You can see those subdivided polygons. I've got a very long polygon here. In fact, let me look at this. We can select it. Subdividing into a thin polygon here, and this one is subdividing into this. They're all subdividing into each other, but it's this long one here that is subdividing into this that we want to draw our attention to. If we look at this from the side, and we come way down here and we look at it, we don't want any curvature coming into that region. We want it to be flat, starting at this point and at this point. So this is where we come in and we can add a hard edge crease. So I'm going to switch over to edge mode, and I'll select that edge, hold the shift key, and I'll select that edge. And when I am in edge mode, we come down and we invoke edge crease, which is shift E. And what you do is you just mouse back and forth until you see the effect sort of happening. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo, and I'm going to turn off optimal display. This is more apparent when you can actually see the subdivided polygons. So I'm pressing shift and E, and you just mouse until you see those subdivided polygons, so they're only sitting within the original domain of the original parent polygon that they're being subdivided from. They're not passing that hard boundary. And that's exactly what we want right here. We can see that we've got this very well controlled. They're not passing these points that we've put the hard edge crease in. Okay, so our planar region is exactly planar. So let's come back over here, back to our working file. And that's what we're going to do around here. So I'm going to make sure I'm in edge mode, click on this, press that shift E key, and just pull left to right. You can see a colorization change right here. Okay, and if you're not sure where it is, just click to release and then come down to edge crease and make sure that that is a value of 1.0. Let's come to the top here. Let's do the same thing. Loop around there, Shift E, pull for a distance, and then just make sure that value is 1. Now, you can see here, if we subdivide, let's come over here and add a subdivision modifier here. Let's turn off optimal display. In fact, I'm going to increase the subdivision to 2. You can see how it prevents subdivision from passing that. But what I'd like to do is add a couple more cuts on the inside of here. So we're going to do a loop cut on the interior. Click, hold, and drag. You can see the subdivision in real time till it gets right up to about there. And I'm immediately going to press Shift and E, and we're going to make sure that is a value of 1. And let's do the same thing on the bottom. I'm still in that loop cut tool, so I can come anywhere, click, hold, and drag, and pull that down. Shift E, and there we go. So that is really nicely controlled and formed. And we'll get just a little bit of rounding around here, but nothing down into that straight region. Pretty cool stuff. Let's turn off subdivision. I'm just going to disable it right now. What I would like to do is a little bit more forming. I would like maybe for this to be a little bit more of a gentle curve. So I'm in edge mode. I'm going to select this right here, this inner edge. I need to hold the Shift key and add that. And I'm just going to press the S key to scale that so it comes in just a little bit. These are all the kind of things that you can play with and adjust with subdivision surfaces. It's really great. This is a planar region, and this is one of the things I always want you to be aware of, is when you are working in a planar region, you have more flexibility with the configuration of your polygons. So these are all planar to each other, and we created a planar row of polygons on the outside. All of these are planar. That gives us a lot of flexibility in configuring these interior polygons, or rather not exactly worrying how they're configured. Because when they're subdivided, all the subdivided polygons will also be planar, and you don't really need to worry about how pretty they look. And that's exactly the case here. You can see all of these don't exactly look pretty, but functionally they're going to render correctly. However, if you do want to make them look a little bit more ordered, I'm going to press the Shift key to select these, and you can bring up the context menu and you can just invoke triangulate faces. And that will actually make them look more ordered, but functionally it's really not super critical, but I like doing it just because it looks nice. We could do the same thing here, and we could do the same thing here. We could come over here and triangulate those just to make them look nice. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. We're going to switch back into edge mode. I'm going to double click this loop and press Shift E, and we're also going to make these a hard edge, because we've got a very thin row of polygons here that are planar to these interiors, and we don't want those subdivided polygons to pull inward a little bit. So the value is 1, which is what we want. Okay, so this is coming together really, really nicely, and this is looking really good. The next thing that we need to do is there's a lip on the back that allows the lid to be sort of pulled up and out of the coffee mug, and that's what we're going to model next. Let's switch over into the top view here, and we're in selection circle, which is what we want. I'm going to hold the Shift key, and I want to be in face mode. Hold the Shift key and select across those polygons right here. So we're going to do 3 on either side of the center line. Okay, now we're going to come over here, and we're going to come over to the extrude region. And what this is going to do is allow us to extrude up along just a specific vector. In this particular case, I just want to go up like that along the z-axis. Let's come up just a little ways, about like that. We can always form things, don't worry if it's not exact. So for instance, I can come over here and still adjust that a little bit. And what I want to do now is I want to scale this so that this is flat on the top. I want to make sure that's quite flat. And then We're going to scale inwards just a little bit. So it's about like that. Okay, and then what I want to do is scale it a little bit like that. And then we're going to come over to the move tool and we're going to move it back. Okay, so this is such the great thing about polygon modeling is you just have a lot of great control like this. So we can come over and form it just a little bit more. I like that. That looks about good. It's just sort of following the topology, the original topology. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come over here. In fact, I think it's still a little bit too tall. I'm going to bring that down just a bit. I'm going to come back over here to that loop cut function, click, hold, and drag. Now let me show you, there are a couple of ways that we could do this. This is one way, and I'm going to switch over into sort of a side view like this. But another way that we could do this is to use that K key again, that cut. We're going to look at it in a little bit of a different way right here. So I'm going to press the K key. I'm going to click about right here and I'm going to pull over. Now I want that to be constrained along the y-axis. So I'm going to press the Y key and that will only go along that y-axis. But if I click, take a look what happens. It's only cut visible faces. So when we are in any kind of a hidden line mode like that, it will only cut the selected faces. So I'm going to undo, and I'm going to come back over here into that side view. Let's invoke the K key again. I'm going to click about right here, Y key, and then you press the C key, and the C key is critical. Click, and what the C key will do, in fact, I'm going to press the Enter key to leave that mode. It will let you cut all the way through. So that's really great, the C key. Now let's come over here and subdivide this. So if we come over and turn our subdivision back on, you see how easy that was? But I'd like to do even just a little bit more forming to this. I'd like this to be a little bit more defined, this corner right here. So what I'm going to do is let's turn off subdivision. It's too much sometimes. I'm going to come over to the K key again. And I'm going to click like this. I'm going to come over and click close to that edge here, and then I'm going to anchor it right there. Now I'm going to hit Enter key, K key again, and we'll just click here and go to there. Enter key. And so when we turn on subdivision again, what that does is it gives us just a little bit of a harder edge to work with. In fact, this is where we could also come in. Let me double click that loop, and we could also use that crease function. So Shift E, if we wanted those subdivided polygons to be a little bit more close, but it's such a short distance that it's not likely something that you would see. I just wanted you to become aware of that. Okay, so let's press the Tab key. So we leave edit mode, and let's look at this in a shaded view. So we're going to come over here and click this. And if you look very carefully, you can see faceting. We can see flat faces on here. In fact, let's take this back down to 1. You can see those clearly. So what we need to do is bring up the context menu and invoke Shade Smooth. That will turn on surface normal shading. And there we go. So we have a very nicely formed object. Now the last thing that we need to do is, let's come over here, is there's a little hole down here that is an air intake. If you leave this here, the fluid isn't going to come through very well because the air needs to go in where the fluid's trying to come out. So that is the last component that we're going to do. What we want to do now is we want to come in here. There's going to be a little circle inlet hole right here. We need to add a little bit more geometry in this planar region. So I will come back in, tab to come back into edit mode right here. So what I would like to do is take these edges right here. In fact, let me come into the top view. And I want to add sort of a partial loop along here. So I'm going to press the K key again. And I'm just going to go right to the center. And I'll add those. I'm holding the Shift key still. And then I'm going to come here and anchor that right there. In fact, I needed to do that on the other side. So I'm going to press Return, K key, and I will click here to here. Okay, let me just show you. If you come down to the edge loop function, since it detects that there's this odd configuration right here, and it says, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to put a loop right there. Because it detects this angle right there, and it says, I don't know what direction to go, and so it just stops. And that's actually very useful. Now, if we wanted to come in here and scale these just in a little bit, we could very easily do that. So I'm going to come over to the scale function, but we want that pivot point to be right here. In fact, I don't want it to be down there. I want it to be exactly at the top here. So this is where I need to switch over temporarily to vertex mode, select that, and then press Shift and S, and I want the cursor to the active element, which is that vertex that we've just selected. Now let's come back into the top view, and I'm going to select here, hold the Shift key, and oops, I'm in the Move tool. Let's come back over to the Move tool. There we go. Scale, but I'm going to press the period key, and I'm going to come over, and I want that again to be at the 3D cursor. So now when I scale, it kind of moves that in a little bit. I'm going to come over here and select those, and I'm going to scale those inward just a little bit from that center location. I usually like to reset, so I'm going to press the period and go back to active element. Okay, so let's come in here now and do something. I'm going to select this vertex right here, and again, I'm going to press Shift and S, and I'm going to say cursor to active. And then we're going to come in and we're just going to delete these polygons at the top. So let me rotate this. Face mode. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select these, and I'm going to delete them. So what we have is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 edges. Bring up your context menu. So we're going to come over here to the add menu, and we're going to add a circle. It comes in right here, but it's enormous again. So let's do 1 centimeter, and then immediately press the S key to scale that. Now, unfortunately, what's going to happen is if you press the S key right away, it removes the option. So let's undo that. I'm going to press the X key to delete these edges because they're just edges right now. So we're going to come in and we're going to add a circle. And we want it to be just 8 edges to match the surrounding geometry. And then I will scale it to bring it in about like that. There we go. And then we're going to come in here. I'm just going to go to Edge Mode, Selection Tool, and I'm going to double click to select both of those loops, and then we can come up to Edge. We can do Bridge Edge Loops. There we go. Now we need to come down here to the bottom, and we need to remove these polygons here because that needs to go all the way to the bottom. So on the bottom, I'm going to press the X key, and we're going to delete those faces. And then we're going to do the same operation that we had done before. I'm going to select these edges. We're going to come to Edge, Extrude Edges. I'm going to press the Z key so it only moves down along the Z axis right there. Vertex mode, we need to find a vertex to assign Shift S, the cursor to, and then come back over to Scale and select these. Now you can double click them and it'll loop those vertices like that, which is nice. I need to press the period key and reassign that pivot point to where the 3D cursor is. Scale that. There we go. And we have the same situation. We need to match up the number of edges right here. So I'm going to come back to face mode, but I'm going to press that K key, and I'm going to just go right to the center, come to here. Let's rotate a little bit better. Click, hit the Enter key, K key again. We'll click here, and then Shift will go to the center of the edge. Hit Return. Okay, now we just need to come in to Edge Mode, select this edge, select this edge and invoke that bridge function. There we go. Final operation is to, in face mode, click those, and then we'll come over to our extrude along normals and bring those in. Those are very important boundary polygons right around here. And then we'll use the loop cut function, click, hold, and drag to pull a loop there, to pull a loop there. And then finally, I'm going to hold the shift key, select those and those, come to the top, hold the shift key again to add these to the selection, and then press shift and E to assign that hard loop. Now you see here I didn't get all the way to 1. I got impatient, so now I just type in 1, and that will add that in. We can turn subdivision back on. We have a hole that goes down to the bottom. The final operation that we need to do is another symmetry, because we did work over here and we want that to come to the other side. So I'm going to turn off subdivision. Go into X-ray mode. We need to switch to selection box and then marquee, like that. X key, we're deleting the faces, and then we just add in symmetry. Now I'm going to turn off, I'm going to tab key over here. I'm going to remove subdivision temporarily, and we're just going to invoke that mirror function. There we go. Making sure that you're not having anything welded because of the merge distance. And then we can, I'm just going to apply that, add subdivision back on. There we go. Set this to 2 so we can see that a little bit more finely. And there is the lid to our coffee mug. So I hope you found this to be useful. This is the kind of thing that can be done with the relatively few modeling tools, core modeling tools in Blender.